Hit the pause.
All right, yeah. It does it automatically.
In the year 1951, the Earth stood still.
Right. I think it does that in the Bible too, but it's very different circumstances.
I remember my granddad telling me that if the Earth stopped spinning, we'd all fly into space. That's not correct. Don't worry.
Oh no, yeah, gravity came into mind a second later.
Yeah,
but
it's not centrifugal.
No.
Yeah, I was like, I just remember the graviton. Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, getting twirled around the graviton. Making me think about physics at a young age, and also about hurling when I got out. So,
isn't that an Olympic sport?
It should be, because that would be a cool Olympic sport. The graviton, then you have to do laps around the walls. That would, you know what? I think you figured out the next Summer Olympics there. And who are you? This is Matt.
This is Luke.
This is the Sci-Fi Sanctuary. And hello, Eric Stillwell, to join us
Hello.
again. Of course, we should, since we're not doing a Trek film today, we need to point out that you are one of our Trek dudes, writer of yesterday's Enterprise, coming in to do Insurrection with us, and the movie itself. Very cool. So thanks for coming back. As I said, we see you traveling around a lot, so I thought I'd just pin you down when you weren't.
Well, you're welcome.
You joined us for the first time back in December 2020 to talk about yesterday's Enterprise. And that Christmas, I bought Matt for Christmas a very nice model of the Enterprise C. Matt, what's happened with that model in the past year and 2 months?
I see it every day because it's next to all of my underwear.
Is it out of its box yet?
I took it out once. Now, I do want to say that when we talked to Eric, your note was there was never a model of the Enterprise C Eagle Moss style with the lights and stuff already built, where I'm I have to go buy glue and learn things.
Basically, I bought Matt a quite expensive model kit a year and 2 months ago, and he hasn't taken it out of the box yet.
But I do appreciate it all the time.
And I just wanted to publicly call him out for that.
Well, I'm waiting for mine to come. I'm supposed to be getting an XL size one that's already in the box.
Oh, nice.
Right. With the lights, yeah?
I don't know if it has.
Oh, no lights.
Okay.
Lights would be cool too.
But yeah, so basically this is the one that you were saying didn't exist last time. So that's pretty cool.
No, I'm saying you said it had lights.
Okay.
It doesn't have lights.
Well, I think the 1701 model that I have, if you press the dome, it lights up.
That's
and then
yes,
and
that's
then
what
William Shatner says something like "Space, the final frontier."
Okay, cool.
Of course, today we now this is not a Trek movie, but we will be tying it in a fair amount to Trek. The director Robert Weiss also made the motion picture. Day the Earth Stood Still is very much a stalwart of sci-fi. Just before he came on, we were noting we did the Thing from Another World a few months ago, and we're like, what was the sci-fi before this? Did the 40s have any sci-fi? And I looked, and apparently in Hollywood, the last big budget sci-fis between Day the Earth Stood Still and Thing from Another World was just oh god, the name is, it's 1930, Just Believe or something like that, which is a musical. It's a comedy, it's a sci-fi, and it's apparently a disaster you can watch on YouTube. I'm sure we'll do that sooner than later, but sorry, the name has escaped, but yeah, this really was the start of sci-fi in Hollywood. Yeah,
because I guess before that was the serials,
which were pretty low budget,
but not with the big budget sci-fi.
But we like to do it when we first saw this one. It's hard for me to know where I saw it, because I guess it was on TV when I was a kid in the 80s, and then it was kind of hard to find on home media. I think I actually had in the early 2000s had to send proof of purchases to get this. I got this in Sunrise, the 1927 Murnau silent film, with my proof of purchases. So this was one of those everyone knew the movie, but it's really hard to find. So watching it last night or 2 nights ago or whatever, I think it was only the third or maybe the third time I'd seen it.
Well, I watched it again yesterday, and I think it's the first time I've seen it in 40 years. But I forgot how old it was.
It's in black and white, man.
Well, back in the 70s, it was only 20, 25 years old. Now it's how old? 70?
Yeah, it should have been 70th anniversary last year.
Yeah, if you were to find from how far we are removed from this film. You know, if you went the other way, a movie to relate to that would be nothing because there were no movies.
Yeah.
Luke, how about for you?
So I definitely did watch this as a kid. It must have just come up on TV.
Mm.
It's the sort of film that does. And I remember around the time the Keanu Reeves one came out, deliberately watching this one. So I don't know if I looked through the TV guide and it was on, or if I picked up a DVD. So I think this was probably my third time of watching. It's one of those films like Rocky, where you watch it and you're like, oh, this is so generic. And then you're like, oh, no, this is inventing all of these things that I think are generic.
Maybe that's a nicer way of saying it's so old.
Yeah.
It's definitely a period piece.
But it's not like unwatchably old. It's a fun little film.
No, I mean, often for holidays, I'll put on like, 30s gangster films. So, I'm down for some old Hollywood here and there.
Well, I forgot that Patricia Neal was in it. And I sort of thought that was kind of cool because Trisha O'Neill was in yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh, right.
Okay, so this film is 70 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The first recorded video was 1888. So that is less than 70 years before this film.
Good, because I wasn't sure if my math worked or not.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, I've been looking at like Twilight Zones with early space travel, which it's just weird to watch some of the sci-fi now that space, well, at least like near Earth space travel is like pretty much assumed. Just all these things that were like space is like this great unknown it's a little bit weird to watch now.
The pressing thing to think is that in the 71 years since this film, we have not listened to its message.
No, we should have been annihilated by now.
Exactly.
The
the funny thing was when I was watching, and you have to put it into the context of the time, it was only 4 years after the Roswell incident, which was probably sort of a big deal back in those days. I mean, it's still a big deal, but back then, I think there was still some like flying saucer hysteria kind of stuff happening. Yeah. When was George or H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds broadcast?
So the H.G. Wells book was in like 1898.
But the
radio broadcast, I think, was in I want to say the 30s,
38 or 39. Right? But the movie was right this time.
53, so 2 years after this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was interesting to me was it was almost the ideology of the alien who came to Earth was reminiscent to me of the Federation.
Yeah, definitely.
To say we have this group of planets and we want to protect ourselves from you guys because you've got the technology now that can destroy worlds.
The origin of the UFO lands, but it comes in peace?
Pretty much. I'm sure 40s like pulp magazines.
I'm sure I had it in literature, yeah, but in terms of on screen, before
except
this,
in this case, he said, "Take me to your leaders."
Yeah.
But still, he landed in Washington D.C. of all places. So
yeah.
Well, about a year ago, we looked at. You mentioned H.G. Wells, and we looked at the movie of Things to Come, which was again 38, 39, and when they have the guy arriving from the
there's like super society of
the science society to come to the people who have kind of fallen back in the dark ages. It's very much the same, where he kind of lands and they kind of imprison him for a while, and yeah, in this case they're all earthlings. We're not going extraterrestrial, but that's definitely a good through line of that H.G. Wells trope, and that line from there to here.
So I guess I should talk about how we came to be discussing the day the Earth stood still, and it goes back about 40 years to when I was in college, and I was taking a class where we had to write a comparative essay, and I think I was a freshman, and I thought, well, I'm going to compare something to Star Trek. But one of the requirements was the two things that you were going to compare had to have some commonalities. So I thought, I'm going to compare Star Trek the Motion Picture with The Day the Earth Stood Still, because they're both sci-fi and they were both directed by the same director, Robert Wise. So that's where the premise for this discussion came from. But then after watching both of the movies again yesterday, I thought, wow, that's a really thin the premise. So
what Matt was saying was this kind of has more in common with like an episode of TOS
like
than it does with the motion picture.
If you think of Klaatu as sort of being Kirk coming down and making a first contact and getting in prison for a while and escaping and living with the people, that I'm like, wow, if you just kind of flip this a little bit and make this the alien planet, it actually does feel like a Star Trek episode. You know, Gort could be basically like what, Spock or something.
Well, they're almost like the Vulcans who came to Earth, right? And sounds sort of primitive civilization who was afraid of everything outside of it. Well, xenophobic.
It may have been in your attempt to get a decent score in your college class, but we're going to support you. Maybe not directly on the motion picture, but with Star Trek, we have some things to talk about. So before we get too deep, Luke, you want to rock us out on the quick story for those who maybe didn't watch this movie recently?
Yep, I will run us through the plot. Although I think it's one that's probably pretty ingrained in most people's minds.
People know the basic beats if they don't know the movie itself, but...
A flying saucer sends the world into a frenzy before touching down in Washington, D.C. From within emerges a spaceman, Klaatu, and his robot companion, Gort. He attempts to make a peaceful introduction, but gets shot by a jumpy soldier. Gort begins to attack, but Klaatu shuts him down. Klaatu is hospitalized, but after his demands to meet the combined leaders of Earth are refused, he escapes to go undercover in civilian life. He befriends a young boy and his mother, Helen, meets a leading professor, and agrees to give a harmless display of power before meeting Earth's scientists. Klaatu shuts down all of Earth's electricity for 30 minutes, barring life-threatening devices, and prepares to meet the scientists. Alas, Helen's jealous fiancé has ratted on him, and the army are closing in. Klaatu is shot, and Gort goes on another rampage, until Helen can tell it, Klaatu Barada Nikto. Gort temporarily revives Klaatu, who delivers his warning to the people of Earth. If they take their warlike ways to the stars, the Galactic Society will snuff the planet out.
Okay, rocking on into the actors a bit. You already mentioned Patricia O'Neill. And one of the other reasons I mentioned there hadn't been a sci-fi in so long is she was convinced this was going to be absolute crap and was apparently like having trouble not giggling when delivering most of her lines.
Well, I was wondering a little bit, because the film is quite a serious film and well made and doesn't look cheap and schlocky. But I was thinking, like, at this time in 1951, I assume everyone thinks it is going to be cheap, schlocky, rubber monster nonsense,
including its leading lady.
Yeah, so I'm amused to find that even she thought that.
But she, I guess they got the good takes where she was not giggling, and she's fine.
Well, she's sort of the catalyst, the turning catalyst of the whole story.
Mm.
I mean, she's the one who sort of saves the day, right?
Yeah.
She shows him like the good side of humanity, I guess.
She had a lot of trouble not giggling when saying
I'm actually impressed it didn't lean more into like a romance angle. They have like a friendship, but he's not, they don't like embrace and kiss at the end or anything.
It's 1950s romance.
Yeah.
Kind of subtle.
I suppose, they couldn't show her cheating on her fiance. Heaven forbid.
Well, towards the end there, it kind of felt like she dumped him.
Oh, yeah, she definitely dumped him, and with good reason.
Went back to the spaceman. But then there was that classic, 50s sci-fi moment where she falls over and screams, "Ah!"
Yeah.
before delivering her vital message to Gort.
And there was another actress in line for that, which I want to say was maybe Forbidden Planets. Is that Anne Francis in Forbidden Planet?
I don't know, dude.
Okay, I hopefully I'm right about that. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong by whatever communication means. But yeah, I was. You can at least like put her into this role and see how that. I mean, it would have worked fine, but no flaw against the film. The other one, that for Klaatu's role, there were some other thoughts. Claude Rains was in line. They actually kind of did want someone with a classier accent playing the role, but kind of went for choosing
Michael Rennie.
Michael Rennie, because he wasn't well known in the States, and so that would make him seem like more alien.
I love him in this role because he's just got this bemused, like parenty, like patronizing attitude to all the humans around him. Whenever they're threatening him or he's just like like a little smirk or a little giggle. It's very best. It's quite Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's what I'll say.
His reaction to humans is very Doctor Who. Just like, well, you'll grow out of it.
Well, and it's also interesting they made no attempt to make him more alien. Like it's like all humanoids in the universe look exactly like humans.
Although it seems he says 250 million miles, which Mars is 410. So again, they're getting their numbers a little off here, but he's got to be pretty close by. It's got to be Venus or Mars for him, basically.
Right.
Interesting.
Keeping in the solar system, and again, I think that's just a 50 sci-fi convention. I've been noticing more and more where they really didn't think about the numbers that hard.
Well, and one of the newspapers that they show with the headlines it said "Man from Mars" on it.
Yeah. So, but in 1951, maybe you'd assume everyone was from Mars. You mentioned the sci-fi hysteria a little bit, and it was 1950 or 1951 where there was the lights above Washington D.C. incident, which maybe you've heard about.
I think I've probably seen.
Yeah, which does have official accounts of it, so that's kind of interesting. That would have definitely been on the mind of the people making this. None of it filmed in Washington, by the way. Second unit went there, but none of the actors went there. So when they're at the Lincoln Memorial, that's just back screen from the second unit.
Well, and apparently back then people just sat in the grass on the causeways next to roads and lounged around. People were just having a good old time there.
I don't know. I guess it's not Washington D.C., but I kind of do that. We have the cherry blossoms in spring, and my family and I sometimes will just plop on right next to the street, next to a river, and do the thing. Which is eating fried chicken and drinking. So
I will say this film has a child actor in it. He was all right.
He was there.
He was pretty good.
Yeah.
Because he later on was in a TV series, Father Knows Best.
Okay. Yeah, Billy Gray is the actor's name. Bobby Watson is the character. But people often talk about like Spielberg era. Spielberg was so good at getting kids to perform. I'm sure this kid's not doing any great acting or whatever, but he wasn't annoying or anything. And I actually, in terms of the character, just like, what a nice, cheerful kid. Whatever they said, he's just like, okay.
My favorite line was when he said to the guy, the alien, who was going by Carpenter at that time, "You don't seem to know much about anything."
Yeah.
That shows you're an alien. That's how you reveal yourself. Do look up the name for this guy because he has the best name ever. But Gort was played by a guy who was the doorman at the Grauman's Chinese Theater in L.A.
Okay.
7'2".
Lock Martin.
Yes, I knew his name was awesome. Okay. But
what was it?
Lock Martin.
Okay.
It's like Lockheed Martin or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, it's just Lock Martin. But 7'2". Apparently, though, he was quite frail. So anytime you see him carrying people, like
he carries her at the end.
He carries Helen and he carries
Katu back to the ship. Yeah.
He needed help. Like there's tricks, like there's wires, or there's like somewhere like you don't see part of the shot, so someone can hold it up, or he's holding like a lightweight dummy, because being 7'2" apparently does not necessarily mean you have the strength that goes along with that.
Right. Yeah.
It's plus that clunky costume he was wearing.
Made of fabric.
Was it?
It was like sewn together on both sides to give it a seamless look. But yeah, it seems it was not metal but fabric. But Robert Wise, because the actor was not particularly robust. I mean, in height he was, but otherwise not.
Robust.
Robust. Yeah, he only robot in this case. They actually only kept him in the suit for 30 minutes at a time, just so he would not, like
the scene
pass out.
when Gort's just standing still. Is it a mannequin or did they get the actor to stand really still?
I don't know, because
I found myself watching, like, is he shaking? Is he shaking? No, it stood very still. So I'm pretty sure they probably just had like a stuffed version that they would have.
Yeah.
For scenes where he's standing still. That's right. Dumb thing to care about, but I just remember thinking that as I was watching it. Like,
but considering he was only in the suit for 30 minutes at a time, you may very well be right on that.
Yeah, probably. You're talking about him being so tall. I can't find it, but I heard a factoid a while back, like something like over a certain height, 50% of people at that height are employed by the NBA.
That's gotta be wrong.
No, but there's an insane statistic where over a certain height, it's just like pretty much everyone of that height is a basketball player. Probably not 50%, probably like 10%.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the arms race of tall basketball players has gotten so ridiculous.
Where should we start off on analyzing this movie? Shall we start with the Christmas perspective or the Star Trek one?
Well, I sort of wanted to share the broad stroke similarities between The Day the Earth Stood Still and Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Okay, well, you run it by us and we'll give you a grade from A to F.
Okay. So both movies were directed by Robert Wise.
Okay, tick.
28 years apart. So it wasn't, I mean, it was almost 30 years later. And both movies are about an alien presence coming to Earth.
So far, true.
Basically threatening to destroy the Earth if certain demands aren't met, right? And both movies have a critical role for a robot or an android in the case of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And in both movies, a human needs to deliver a coded message to prevent basically the destruction of the Earth. Because if Gort had just gone off, he had the potential to destroy the planet, and V'ger was threatening to destroy the Earth. And so these are the broad stroke similarities between the two movies. But then there's a lot of smaller basic things that are similar, like the aliens neutralizing the humans' weapons. Or in the case of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, we have shoot first and talk later when it comes to the Klingons. And basically, so there's the Klingons in the US Army shooting at them, and all the weapons get neutralized. And then towards the end of the movie, both of them have this moment of all the electricity on Earth is shut down, or all of Earth's defense systems are basically inoperative in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So there's all these sort of similarities that I don't know how, as a director, that would have escaped Robert Wise's mind, that he had done all of these things before.
Maybe it's kind of like he got, he had his first pass at him, was, like coming back as a middle-aged or older. I don't know how old he was at the time, but it's like, hey, I can like kind of refine those ideas now. I've got like I've got all the backstory set. I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to start from scratch, the
funny thing was, even though when I first started watching The Day the Earth Stood Still again, I had forgotten how old it was and how sort of quaint it is for the 1950s kind of mentality. But then watching Star Trek: The Motion Picture right afterwards was almost painful to me because the movie is so stilted and slow moving, and I don't know, it was really hard for me because it just brought back all of the reasons why Star Trek the Motion Picture was a little disappointing to me. And I know that they had a lot of problems with production and delays and visual effect, crises and all that, but it makes it difficult to watch.
There's a certain mood I have to be in to enjoy the motion picture. But
like in the beginning of the
I'm in
movie,
that mood.
when the Enterprise leaves Earth and Kirk says something about because of the thread, I'm risking warp drive before leaving the system or something, before leaving the solar system. But then at the end of the movie, when everything is all back to normal, there's still an Earth orbit, and he says warp one.
Well, the Earth exploded after that. That's how the human adventure began. You're like, oh, I forgot about that. That's why I need to be demoted back to captain. That was his first attempt to get demoted. They had to rebuild Earth, Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy style.
And of course, they started that trend that I hate in all the Star Trek movies, where there's a threat to Earth, and the Enterprise is the only ship anywhere near the Earth.
Yeah, it's like that holds water unless you're at Earth. Like if you're out in Talos or something,
They really not have a fleet at Earth.
Well, but then the other day I was watching a Deep Space Nine episode where the Breen attacked Earth. And I'm like, well, no wonder there's no starships at Earth.
That sounds about right.
In terms of the movies, we've got motion picture, Star Trek 4,
World's Ending, right?
Yeah. First Contact.
Yeah.
Admittedly, there are other ships there, but still the Enterprise is the only one that goes back.
Nemesis, it's not quite as immediate, but it's happening.
Nemesis. Star Trek 09.
Yeah.
Into Darkness.
Yeah.
So that's 6 of the 13 Star Trek films involve Earth is under attack and only Enterprise can save it.
Well, when I was working with Michael Piller when he was writing Star Trek Insurrection, I said to Michael, please don't put that line in the movie where the Enterprise is the only ship that can respond to the situation. I tried to convince him of a few things, but I'm not sure it was overall successful. I always said to Michael too, I hate it that the movies always have to be like the end of the universe cataclysmic crises. Like the reason people loved Star Trek was every week there was an adventure that happened. It doesn't have to be the end of the universe in every movie that you make. Like all the things that people loved about the shows, they kind of did the opposite of that in the movies. Like suddenly Patrick Stewart has to be the action man in all the movies, but in the series he was just on the bridge being philosophical, and suddenly like, oh, he has to be the action hero now.
But the reason for that is just Patrick Stewart wouldn't do it unless they let him be the action hero.
Well, I know that.
It's like what?
Oh, I guess you were there. Yeah. Why am I telling you that?
What's the clip you sent me of? Was it extras? Clip,
yeah, I found there's a great edit I found on YouTube. Do you know the British sitcom Extras?
No.
It's a Ricky Gervais joint, but it has various celebrities playing parodies of themselves. And there's an episode with Patrick Stewart, and he's there telling him about, I'm actually writing my own movies, and I play a character like Professor X, but he meets a beautiful woman, and all of her clothes fall off. But basically, he's listing all these ridiculous things he put in his movie, and someone has cut it together with Star Trek Picard. And when all of these ridiculous things do happen around Patrick Stewart, the video is just titled like "Why You Don't Give Patrick Stewart Creative Control."
Although you do, Picard season 1 was fun, kind of fun. It was reasonably fun.
Yeah. But yeah, if Patrick Stewart had his way, it would just be him swanning around as James Bond, getting with beautiful women. So.
He didn't have those Roger Moore problems.
No.
Now, maybe I'm gonna. Robert Wise is such a strong hit, right, between the two. The one that, when watching it last night, though, the one that really stuck with me was, I mentioned TOS and the Errand of Mercy with the Elosians, where they the Klingons and the humans, the Federation, I should say, are trying to fight each other, and we're just going to make all your
Organians.
Organians, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Where are the Illusions from? Okay. Anyway. Yes.
I think aren't they Guyanans people or something? I don't know.
That
Might be
probably is right. Yeah. Okay. Yes, the Organians, and they just heat up everyone's weapons, and that to me felt like this movie. This one's a little more milquetoast. They just stop all the power instead of make everyone's weapons hot. But
Well, when Gort's stopping the soldiers, that's what he's doing, is melting their weapons.
yeah, that happens, of course. So
Well, and then Star Trek: The Motion Picture is just a rehash of the Changeling.
yeah.
Nomad.
Yeah, well, where Nomad had gone before, as people like to call that movie.
That works. Okay.
Yeah.
But to me, that's where like Star Trek totally redid the message of this movie. So the motion picture didn't quite, definitely had the alien contact. There's a lot in common. So it was worth looking into. But my take watching last night, I kept thinking of Aaron and Mercy a lot. So and in a good way, it's like that's a pretty cool connection. You could even like dovetail that in with the motion picture if you want to. So there is a lot of Star Trek here. The Federation, the Federation kept coming to my mind watching this. So
Yeah. Well,
But was there a pop song though in the 1950s where they borrowed some of the dialogue from the show? And pure energy.
yeah, well,
You know that song?
No, all I know is for TNG, where you got I think it's Orbital, the electronic act starting with Worf, when time becomes a loop, when time becomes a loop, when time becomes a loop, and kind of kicks into the techno after that. But there's tons of 50s interesting novelties. So speaking of which, I just read a chapter in a book about what happened with the Monster Mash guy.
okay. I'm still waiting for the day he sues me.
Unfortunately, he's not going to sue you.
Yeah.
But now one big difference between this and the Federation is this is based on a story, apparently, where basically the Gorts, the robots, or the Gnerts or something like that, but they're in charge.
Right.
Klaatu in the story is actually like a clone.
Okay.
So they only create him to do this mission when he's there.
When I don't want to talk about it too much, but in the Keanu Reeves one, I think they do make more of a point of it, of like Klaatu only looks like this because he's been created to talk to the humans.
Well, one of the things I don't remember from watching it years ago was the part where he introduces him as a being from a race of robots.
Yeah.
And then later in the movie, when he's explaining to the humans, they've basically given over authority to this race of robots to prevent any violence or whatever in their culture or society. It's sort of ominous in a way that the people on another planet basically gave over control of their lives to this police force of robots to protect them.
Yeah, see, that seems very un-Federation, right? So
yeah, and to protect them from themselves, no less.
Yeah.
The Star Trek universe seems to almost have mostly like banned AI. Even up through Discovery, that's kind of a point they make, that Data is like a weird outlier where the AI actually took hold.
Well,
Except now on Discovery, the Enterprise or Discovery computer has sentience.
Right. So you can
and they're making it, her, whatever, as part of the crew.
And they had a whole episode like trying to figure out what is going on here, which actually is kind of cool, because in TNG they kind of glossed over it when the Enterprise computer suddenly became sentient. So I'm always going to back TNG over Discovery, to be perfectly honest, but Discovery at least had the withdrawal to have a conversation with the sentient computer and to figure out what's going on.
Well, I think there's a problem in sci-fi, which, like Dune, it's like, well, I don't want to write a story about robots, so I just have to hand wave away why there's no robots, because everyone knows AI will get more advanced in the future. So Star Trek is, with Picard, they've had to do their own like Dune event. So this is why there's no robots. Shut up about robots.
That's kind of weird, though.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move slightly over to our Holy Christmas. Of course, feel free to mention Trek at any time. We the motion pictures like episode number 1 for us, so we can revisit it as much as we want to.
Yeah.
But apparently in the original story and in the first draft of the script, Klaatu was simply resurrected.
Okay.
And the studio execs were not happy with that. So it's, oh no, I'm only back long enough to give the message.
Yeah.
And even us aliens can't, there's a higher almighty power, which was not in the original script. That was added because the studio executives were like, you can't make him Jesus, basically, which the movie, I mean, he's a carpenter with the initials JC.
Yeah. Delivers a message.
And the humans treat him just like they did Jesus.
Exactly. It's just like, don't kill each other. You're like, no, we don't like that.
Screw you. We like killing each other.
Yeah.
And we'll kill you.
You don't tell me what to do, but
it brings us love. Get it? As the Simpsons said.
And I was just doing a little research, and the screenwriter was like, yeah, I guess I meant it there subtly, but I didn't mention it to anyone. I didn't tell that to Robert Wise or the actor, because I was like, they don't need to know that. But everyone, I guess it was kind of obvious, especially in the 50s.
Yeah. Well, often when we have a film that's a bit like this, you're like, no, it's not really a Christ thing. It's actually more of, no, this one's definitely a Christ thing.
Yeah, this one's almost the first line of the movie's Holy Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And then there was Aunt B.
Yeah. So it's all over, right?
Well, that would be Christmas.
Actress, the actress from the Andy Griffith Show.
Right.
Was the woman staying at that house or whatever. So it was kind of funny. She goes, I don't think they're aliens. I think we all know where they come from. And she's obviously referring to Russia.
Oh, I just worked out. Sorry,
Yeah.
it is a Trek reference. I was like trying to figure out why the Andy Griffith show is taking hits, because his first girlfriend in the black and white version of the show is the lady in the TOS Metamorphosis where he made Zephyr Cochrane. Okay. I don't know why that connected. the Andy Griffith's first girlfriend was a Star Trek guest star.
Okay, well, listeners, you know that one for your next pub quiz.
Okay. I don't know why
and wasn't William Shatner's wife at the navigation console after Aelia got absorbed by the Voyager?
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay, I got something to work with there.
I think it was his wife. She played like Lieutenant DeFalco or whatever.
How many wives has William Shatner had?
That was actually my question. I was going to say before you said it.
I'd be very pleasantly surprised if I found out it was just the one.
At least 4.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a Shatner answer.
I remember reading Star Trek Memories where he's talking about living in my van because my wife had kicked me out. I don't know if you got a cool van. I guess it's cool. But
and then one drowned in the swimming pool, and
like the Rolling Stones. Okay. But yeah,
I would not sleep in William Shatner's van, no matter how much you paid me.
Wonder if it had shag carpeting.
Not till the 70s. I am sitting here thinking though, it's like, okay, Christmas, Jesus metaphor, because we did like 10 minutes talking about the Star Trek, which when we do on more, but I'm like, did we just finish it? It's just like, yeah, it's on the nose. Let's move on.
Yeah, there's no subtlety to the Jesus metaphor. It's pretty in your face. Like, there's not much you can say about it.
But Star Trek: The Motion Picture also had that recurring theme that Gene Roddenberry always wanted to explore, which was I think the original script for the movie was called The God Thing. And then of course in this movie it's the machine the sentient machine looking for the creator, because they're always looking for their creator. So there's a little bit of, even though Roddenberry wasn't religious, he was always trying to explore this notion that humans always have an issue with a deity kind of situation, whether it's them who are the creator or aliens who think they are.
When I was watching the day, the one thing I noticed, because you put Star Trek in my head by making that connection, Star Trek is quite secular, quite an atheist show.
In general.
But this being 1951 sci-fi, is very not that. And they have to make a point of saying, no, don't worry, the aliens believe in God too. They're good.
But there's a few episodes of the original Star Trek where Kirk will say something about God. I was watching Who Mourns for Adonis the other day, and when Adonis is saying you will worship us or whatever, and Kirk says our one God will be sufficient.
Well, it's like even with the cage, I mean, it's like 5 seconds of the show where it's like, okay, you have this old myth, and then it shows Pike like quite literally in hell. I mean, just in 65 TV, which I guess it wasn't there at the time anyway, but there's like just saying like, oh, your mythological, legends, and then showing like very Christian imagery is an interesting move.
But then you get to TNG and Picard saying like, well, I'm not going to teach these people religion. How that would be terrible. No one wants religion.
So in
I
the
guess
50s,
you get away with a bit more in the 80s and 90s than you could in the 60s.
Just think back just a second to the thing from Another World. Did that have anything non-secular? I feel like that was a pretty. The thing from Another World came out about a month before or after the day the Earth stood still.
No, but also it was basically just a monster movie. It didn't get into many deep philosophical questions.
Okay, that's a good point. So this one obviously dives a little deeper.
But then you go 2 years after this, 1953, War of the Worlds, very religious.
But
go a few years back. No, when is Worlds Collide?
But that's after.
Yeah,
maybe at the same time, maybe a year after. So I don't quite
and then
remember.
you've got the spaceship full of Christian white people who get to survive.
But that's because the director himself in that case was quite religious. One thing I was kind of wondering though, in the whole metaphor is Klaatu's here basically just to make an ultimatum. He's not really here to particularly make contact except for to deliver his message. He's not here to explore. He's not here to learn. He's just like, quit blowing things up because we're on the planet over and you're causing us problems.
Well, it seemed like he'd been given permission to make the call to just end them if they wouldn't talk to him. So that's why.
And then what was the deal with him helping solve the equation on the chalkboard? Like, what was that equation for?
I think that was just him getting the professor's attention by proving how smart he was.
I was curious. I looked that up because I was like, is that gibberish from the board? And it turned out that is an at least at the time, probably still now, unsolved theory about like relativity theory about how moving at certain speeds would be possible.
Okay.
So and his solution was probably bunk, but apparently the math on the board has some basis in actual theoretical physics.
Interesting.
Because if it was made these days, you'd assume that would be a deliberate Easter egg.
Yeah.
But a film from 1951, I'd assume they'd just write any old.
Nope, it was actually an Easter egg.
So yeah, fair enough.
Well, I was assuming it wasn't him completing the equation for a hydrogen bomb or something.
No, it was what I read was it was supposed to be some kind of math that would make interstellar travel possible. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Okay.
So he helped solve the problem to help humans get to other worlds where they could blow people up.
Yeah, so they can blow people up more efficiently. Well, again, you didn't want to mention Kiana too much, and I haven't seen that one since it came out anyway. But in that one, Klaatu very much is given the authority to end the humans or not.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference.
Whereas here he's just here to warn us, but he does say like Gort probably could destroy the planet.
Yeah.
Well, especially he said if something happens to me, and then they kill him.
One disappointment watching it last night when I did see it was I'd remembered Gort going on way more of a rampage than he does. But I guess that's just wishful thinking.
In my
I want to see the
mind,
robot destroying things.
I had way more. I don't know how long ago I saw it, but it had to be in the 70s probably. I for some reason remembered that the robot had a bigger part.
Well, it's a very iconic part.
He sticks in your head.
Yeah, people think of that robot when they think of this film. But in terms of actually doing anything, he doesn't do much at all.
I think we think of the poster to a great degree. The poster of the film is a full color poster with Gort carrying Helen, and it looks like some action's going to go down that doesn't really go down that much in the film.
Right.
Yeah, I was hoping
Well-
that he would properly destroy like a whole bunch of tanks before she gets the message to him. He doesn't really do much, and then she immediately tells him to stop.
I made a strange observation watching it last night when they jumped in the yellow cab and they're driving around Washington. The writing on the cab door is the same font as Star Trek Next Generation.
Oh, that's wild, because that we think of that as a futuristic font. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you said like TOS, I would be like, that's cool. Another one that did make me think of Star Trek was, I definitely was thinking of the city. Maybe it's just like period stuff, but I thought the city at the edge forever when Carpenter is like kind of in the boarding house. It had vibes of that. I mean, he's not trying to build some weird machine because he doesn't need to. He's got his robot already, but
He just drops diamonds on the carpet and
it's just what zirconium was, it fake diamonds.
well, they'd never seen anything like it in 1951.
Right. But looking at a gachapon vending machine in Japan now, you'll find them.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fun. I saw a gachapon yesterday. My daughter wanted to go to the manga anime store, so I took her there, and they have all the machines with bubbles. And the one that most impressed me was the gachapon machine that gave you miniature gachapon machines.
Yeah.
I was impressed by that. I was hoping it was like infinite regress, like the little
There'd
one.
be an even smaller one inside of that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
No, what you want is a giant sized one that drops the regular sized ones.
Oh,
That
yeah.
contain the miniature ones.
Yeah.
That's the real dream.
Fractals.
I just got so excited I pulled my headphone out of my own ear. But left the rubber bit behind.
Oh no.
I lost my thought. You have a thought?
No, I was just hoping we'd seen more Gort, but it's quite a simple design. He's just a man in a spacesuit with a helmet.
Well, it's the I think both with the spaceship and with Gort, sort of the design here was to make it look like seamless metal.
I was going to say what this does, which I guess hadn't been done much before, was making the aliens just like their technology is so far beyond us. I feel like most sci-fi, if we go back much earlier, it's the spaceships are just rockets. That's what we understood.
With firecrackers coming out the backs.
Yeah. Here it's like the spaceship is a flying saucer, and it's like we can't see what makes it go. And we can't even see where the moving parts are. And Gort he's just smooth metal because we don't understand their technology.
I didn't quite understand what the effects process was for having the seamless door come out, but
It's
apparently
pretty good,
yeah, apparently the way to close the door is just reverse the footage, because I couldn't do that twice. So that was kind of cool. And I just as a side note, as a Beatle maniac, the other place you'll find Gort is on the cover of 1975's album Goodnight Vienna, with him and Ringo Starr coming out of the spaceship.
Okay. I was just going to say in the Earthbound games, the alien in that is very clearly meant to look like Gort.
Okay.
But that's also meant to be like a love letter to 1950s Americana. So
It just occurred to me, I recognize, I noticed something in both movies and didn't really put it together until just now, but when Patricia Neal had to walk up the ramp, I'm pretty sure she's wearing high heels of some sort, and I'm thinking to myself, I hope the heel doesn't get stuck in that seam where the ramp separates. And then I'm watching Star Trek the motion picture thinking, why does a robot need high heels? And then when they're walking down into where the V'ger is, and I'm like, how can you walk on all that with high?
With
That
all
was
those like hexagonal things and stuff.
Yeah, it was like really sort of dangerous looking, climbing down this.
they're still making their actresses run around in high heels when you get to Jurassic World.
So that part of the world hasn't changed much in years.
Again, when we were at this anime store yesterday on the escalator, there was you might have seen this, there's a sign of somebody like awkwardly falling between the escalators and the plastic barriers. And I'm like, well, they put that sign there because it happened.
Yeah.
Because the picture is like, how no one's gonna do that. But someone must have, or they wouldn't have put it there. Maybe they're in high heels. That's probably the thing.
As a kid, I always used to get scared of my laces getting stuck in the escalator, and I'd get pulled in and chopped up.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that because we were all told horror stories about
Yeah.
some kid whose shoelaces got stuck in the escalator, and then
Well,
I
I just
remember that.
I was just on another podcast coming up with the old style elevators with the grills. You know, obviously you're like, wow, those really are dangerous.
Yeah.
When you give it like more than 2 seconds thought, because in an old movie it's like, oh, there it is. But then you're like, any flaw, yeah, you could.
Well, Matt got caught in the door to my elevator on the way into my building today.
That's because you hit the close on me, apparently.
I was trying to hit open. But yeah, Matt nearly got rancored.
Well, I think we've
Let's
proven.
go to the door.
Yeah, okay.
I think we've proven my point that the comparison of the day of the Earth is still and Star Trek: The Motion Picture was pretty thin.
Yeah.
No, with the high heels, we're gonna give you the high heels for your.
How many points do I have now?
I think you can get about a C-. It's a pass.
That's all you needed, right?
Definitely watched both films. So
this is the sort of thing where it almost seems not worth asking if it's held up, because it's another Library of Congress preserved film. It usually shows up in multiple top 100 lists, especially for sci-fi. Do you agree?
it's definitely a film of its time, but it is well made.
It definitely holds. It holds sort of a prominent place in the history of sci-fi because it seems like everybody's heard of it.
I guess this is sort of the ground zero for Hollywood sci-fi, though, because before this, it really is just Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. We mentioned A Thing from Another World, but it, like you said, it's more of a monster movie. It doesn't have high concept, futuristic, forward-looking sci-fi.
Thing from Another World could have been side by side with Dracula and the Mummy and the Wolfman. It's just this one happens to be from space.
Yeah, because when we did that one, we were looking back as what's all monster. The closest thing you can do in the 40s for sci-fi is monster movies and maybe a serial or two.
Yeah.
So this really is where these ideas basically start for the cinematic world, at least.
Because it's pretty quickly after this, War of the Worlds, Forbidden Planet.
Well, there's
what we think of as the origins of sci-fi happened.
Insane amount of
after this.
Yeah, UFO movies and stuff.
Yeah.
What is the message the aliens are giving us now? In the 50s, it was definitely like turn off the nukes.
Well, in the Keanu one, it was take care of the environment, right?
Yeah, it changed a little bit.
Because the line was, if you die, Earth survives. If Earth dies, you die. So
I'm talking more about the pop culture zeitgeist.
Yeah,
or not even pop culture, but where you hear like when people are like, oh, the aliens took me on their ship and said something. In the 50s, it was usually
the problem is the people who tell you they went on the spaceship are the same people now who are in like the QAnon and the anti-vax. So the aliens took me onto my spaceship and they told me that the vaccine turns you into a pedophile vampire. So buy my crystals to be safe.
If it makes you feel better, I was kind of thinking 50s, 60s, 70s, because by the time we get to Close Encounters, we're in a very different world.
Yeah.
And if you want to go for now, okay, you're in a different world too. But let just for your sake, we'll draw the line between here and Close Encounters, which is about the same time as the motion picture too. So how do aliens change in that 30-year period then?
I don't know.
Do we become like
what a fucking question to drop on us out of the blue, Matt?
No, I'm just trying to think.
Luke, Eric, why don't you quickly tell me how the concept of aliens changed over this 30 years of cinema? Can you do that real quick?
Well, I mean, I guess if you think about what happened between 2001 and Star Trek: The Motion Picture, it's almost about telling us we need to evolve. Like even in with V'ger saying, "Is this all there is? Is this all I am?" And even Spock had the revelation. I have to sort of embrace my humanity or whatever, and it was like humans that were evolving to and the adventure was just beginning.
Well, this came out right after World War II. Like 6 years, and at the start of the Cold War. But the feeling was that in terms of technology and progress, humanity's at the peak. We're killing it. As long as we stop this war thing, we're sorted.
Mm.
Whereas 70 years on, or even 30 years on, it's like, oh, we've got a lot more to learn.
Well, it's like,
Is the difference. So in this film, the alien is a human,
Mm.
basically. And he's telling us like, oh, you're pretty much there in terms of tech. Just sort this out. Whereas by the time we get to Close Encounters, it's like, oh, the universe is much bigger than us and we don't have a clue.
Well, here it's sort of like, you know, we're the aliens are superior to the humans, basically, and they're just like, you know, tone it down a notch. You're not, but we're not inviting you to our party just yet. Close Encounters, at least they invite Richard Dreyfuss to their party.
But on the other hand, this film seemed to be saying like, oh, you're almost at the point where you're a threat to us. So humanity was just at the threshold of stepping into galactic civilization. Whereas Close Encounters, they put him in a zoo.
Yeah,
like they are unknowable.
And in TNG, Riker gets probed multiple times.
Sometimes by consent and sometimes not.
But because you know, there is a TNG where there's like the super like kind of dark horror-y episode where they're being abducted and like, you know, experimented upon. I guess that's why I was getting at the change in the concept of aliens. So yeah.
Well, then there's still themes in Star Trek that the humans are the threat to the rest of the universe, and they have to stop you.
But we were just saying that this film is quite unique in how peaceful its aliens are. Look at the rest of the 50s flying saucer stuff. They're just coming here to shoot beams at us.
Yeah, I mean, they got some mad in the back with Gort there, but
yeah. But like, yeah, they're not just like baddies.
Oh yeah, like I'm saying, the aliens in this are basically the superior creatures, and man needs to, you know, it's like with the Trek and with Q judging things, right?
Yeah,
which is drawn a little more deliberately in the newer one, but to worse effect.
I feel like if you made this sort of story today, what they were trying to change wouldn't be so black and white. Stop fighting wars. Stop. It would be more of a like, you need to make some spiritual change.
Is that The Arrival?
Yeah, they're right. Like, something more like that. You know, there needs to be some consciousness.
But it's funny that the theme from The Day the Earth Stood Still carries through even in Star Trek First Contact.
Yeah,
and the Vulcans basically don't show up until the humans have technology that can get to them. Like, as soon as you have that technology that you can travel through to other solar systems, then we have to come and make contact with you.
So I don't know, I guess just for the first try at Hollywood sci-fi, you know, maybe they didn't knock it out of the park, but they made it quite a bit of hits.
Like
they built the park, yes. So they don't have to knock it out of the park because they built the park. Someone else can knock it out. You build the park and they will come.
I would say that the idea that the military overreacts to aliens arriving on Earth became an ongoing theme of many science fiction movies over the years.
Maybe that's why y'all were expecting to see more robot destruction, because this is like the first time it happened. So it's just like a couple, you know, things blow up, you're good to go. Now you need a little bit more convincing.
Yeah, the humans were the problem in this though, and we haven't changed much.
Give it another 70 years.
Yeah.
That might be a bad idea.
I'm Luke. Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
I'm Matt. I've been dead for 20 years. Okay. Anyway, any final thoughts you want to throw out on this one?
I think I've got more.
I think we've worn it out.
No, Eric, there was enough fuel in the metaphor tank there to run it. We would have, if we had just been like we're talking about The Day There Stood Still, we'd, you know, be like, it's a whole movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, the Star Trek angle probably did help us on that one.
I think it really was. It is a good way to look at it. Again, you know, people are looking at newer shows through that filter, so why not, you know, retrofit and look at some older stuff that way as well.
Well, I one of the things that was sort of impressive about the film for 1951 was that Patricia Neal's character was a pretty strong woman, female character for the time. She wasn't just gonna do whatever her boyfriend told her to do. She stood up to him.
I think that's the other thing that made me think of the City of the Edge of Forever, because Edith Keeler in there is
Yeah.
a relatively well-defined character for someone that's
Mm.
only on screen for maybe 20 minutes.
Because so many of the monster movies of that time were just girls in bikinis screaming when the monster shows up or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought Patricia Neal's character was a pretty good character.
I'm pretty sure I said Patricia O'Neill the first time. Okay.
I'm always screwing it up too.
Yeah. She does get that one scream out at some point. I
Yeah,
remember,
but then she rescues herself.
True. But it's like you have to scream
Kinda.
at least once. There's got to be a horror scream in here.
Yeah.
'Cause we
And
don't know-
and it was like the typical horror scream too.
Yeah, it's like we don't know what sci-fi is yet. Please give us a monster movie scream. But winding it down, like I said, Eric, I've been seeing you on your Facebook, you're at your blog. Can you tell the good folks a bit about that?
Well, I'm mostly just on Facebook nowadays. I didn't renew my blog because nobody looks at it.
Oh, well, I look at your Facebook. So
Yeah.
I guess that's where people should go.
I can use Facebook for what I need to share, but now apparently Zuckerman's threatening to shut down Facebook in Europe because all the countries have all these rules about data storage, and it can't be like exported out of Europe to the United States to be stored on US servers. And so Zuckerman's threatening to just shut down Facebook in Europe, and I'm thinking, well, makes my life simpler.
Yeah. No social media does simplify lives. It's hard to get away sometimes. But Luke's just on the not scrolling. Are you doing that for 2022? You're not scrolling?
I'm not as strict about it, but ever since I did a bit of scrolling at the start of the year, I'm like, no, I should stick to that. That was
Okay.
definitely a better life.
So what does that mean? You just don't scroll?
I
through your
deleted
feed?
Twitter and Facebook from my phone,
Oh,
and I
okay.
don't scroll my feed, but sometimes I sign in to like check things. But yeah,
Well, then when someone posts a picture of all the Star Trek characters in the turbo lift and it says, keep scrolling, we're trying to get to the bridge.
That's why you have to scroll it.
yeah. Well, I just won't look, and I'll scroll my phone, and they'll get where they need to go.
Yeah.
What's our thing?
But if you do like going on social media, you can find us on Twitter at MLSFS130. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary. Make sure you rate and review, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. If you want to hear more of me and Matt's podcasts, you can throw us $1 a month by going to patreon.com/podcastio-podcastius.
All right. Sorry, I wasn't listening.
That's fine. Everyone else has already skipped to the next podcast.
You have to say something really profound then.
Good. Klatu barada nikto.